In this video from We Are Racing, well, hello there, good people from the YouTubes and the intrawebs, and welcome back to We Are Racing. Fast, quick little update on our new project before we head out to Francha to make the follow-up video on last week's topic. Now you might ask, but why? Let me explain. So despite many hours spent on wiring, we are still not in a place where we've got wiring sorted out on this Mazda Miata 1600 motor. One thing that we are particularly concerned about is the absence of an oil pressure sensor switch in this area. All the documentation has got the oil pressure sensor over here, and we don't have one, so we don't quite understand where it's gone or why it's not here. But you can see the amount of wires that we can't find friends for. It is quite a few. The other major issue, we can't find a starter that actually fits on this car and engages the gear. So the setup that you see here is really for us to be able to see if this motor is going to fit, and the good or the bad news is this motor will fit nearly perfectly. But yeah, we're stuck, it's where we're at, and we can't really continue with anything major until we figure out the motor situation. One last thing, let me just move to the back. In the previous video on this car, we mentioned that we wanted to figure out whether the mountings for the suspension needs to go on top or on the side. And our good friends over at Caterham Cave reminded us that yeah, we don't really have a choice in the matter. It all depends on how long these axles are. And you can see we mocked it up here, and fact of the matter is we will mount it on the side, which we're fairly happy about because it gives us that little 3 centimeters, 30 millimeters, just over an inch of extra width on the back, and obviously everything helps to make the car more stable. So we figured that out at least, and at some point we can go ahead and weld this stuff in, which will at least give us the rolling chassis which we've been bragging about. Cool, let's head across to Francois and go make 10 things you should consider when building a project car.
Good day, Graham.
Hello, Francois.
What are we here today to do?
We are chatting about the 10 things you should consider before building a project car. This is not specific to Lotus, this is in general if you're going to build a project car. So before we start, Francois, just a quick note of thanks to Peter Millen, Francois Terblanche, our friends over at Caterham Cave, and a few other guys that have actually taken the time to comment on our last video in terms of the things that they wish they knew before they started their project car. But without further ado, let's get stuck into it.
Hi there, YouTubers. So first thing, Francois made a comment about knowing the history of the car. So if you buy a project car, make sure you know all the owners, not just the previous owner, but all the owners who owned the car previously. If you buy parts from somebody, like what I did from Birkin, make sure you get all the parts, because sometimes the companies do close down. So very important, know the history, full history, paperwork, everything. Especially in South Africa, engine, very important if you plan to register the vehicle.
Francois, another thing to really consider, especially when you start with the wiring on your car, make sure that you mark the ends of your wiring with indelible tags. We were lucky, we got the wiring loom pre-made up from Birkin and it was marked properly, and that's the only way that we were able to do wiring so easily.
Okay, number 3 is when you buy a kit car or a pre-designed vehicle from a company, make sure you ask them if there will be a new version of it. Someone commented to say that he had the S2 body and the wide body S3 came out 6 months later. I was fortunate, I already bought the wide body one. Make sure you ask the people about future developments they're planning.
Francois, we also mentioned this one in our video, but it was reiterated. Don't paint and or start finishing your car too early in your build. It is very tempting to get these things painted and get them looking nice and just get on with those finishing touches and stuff. Stuff will get scuffed, they will get scratched, they will leave marks. So wait until the very last possible moment that you have. In fact, if I had to look back on the build of the Birkin, I reckon where we are now, when upholstery comes back, we will be ready for paint. Not really before that.
Okay, our next comment from Caterham Cave is about knowing how much the car will cost. So you can start off by putting a budget together as Graham did with his new one, but what happens is while you are busy building, you get tempted to do upgrades. So cost of car plus upgrades, you don't know how much it will cost. So one piece of advice we can give you is initially plan, this is what you want to do, put everything together as is, and then only start with the upgrades. So once you have a rolling, running car, then only start with the upgrades. I had an example where when I installed the engine the first time, I saw the sump was this high from the ground, and I decided this won't work. Didn't bother checking with the club members, so I ended up building my own dry sump setup, bought an expensive pump, and trying to figure how to fit everything in. Eventually, when the car went to Graham, he spoke to the people at the Lotus Register and they said, no, it's easy. You just modify the sump. Few rand later, job done, and it works perfectly. We have no oil starvation, no issues.
And then of course, Francois, the likelihood of spending double your budget is very real.
Yeah, very real. And the other advantage of waiting till the car is running is you don't sit with a garage full of half-used parts or parts that's not being used at all anymore.
One of the next things, Francois, and we sort of touched on this in our video as well, is the amount of time that you need to finish a project car. Now, our friends at Caterham Cave expanded this into 3 specific areas, which I think is really relevant. The first one is the amount of time it's going to take you to build this car when you film it. Number 1, getting the film, the camera angles correct, getting the lighting correct, all that sort of stuff, and then not messing up on camera. Because believe you me, if you make the smallest mistake on YouTube, people will very lovely point that out to you and show you where your mistakes were. We haven't, well, mind you, we've got many comments of people saying that we did well, so maybe it is balanced. The second thing is editing that footage and getting it into a video that we can post for you guys. It takes way longer than what you think, because you have to watch through every piece of video, decide what you're going to use, edit it in, edit it out, do whatever you need to do, and then you need to watch the entire clip that you've created from end to end to make sure that you didn't make any mistakes, and then you add music, and then you add finishing touches and start screens and end screens, and then only do you start, then you render it. And that's probably point number 3, is learning the editing software, because editing software is so advanced these days. Rendering, if you don't have a proper laptop, like we started out with what was a mediocre laptop, it would take us more than an hour to render a 15-20 minute video. Now that we've invested in a proper laptop, we are able to render those videos in about 15 minutes or so for a 15-minute video. But it takes forever to do those sort of things. And then of course, uploading that stuff onto YouTube and managing the entire YouTube process, because there are tags, there's stories that you need to write, You need to write your storyline before you start actually filming your stuff. You need to come up with a storyboard. When I started, I knew nothing about storyboarding. Maybe take a course in video editing if this is what you want to do. That was a mouthful, but it was a really good tip. Thanks to the guys at Caterham Cave for that one.
Graham, if I may ask a question.
Yeah.
Once I was helping you and you said to me, please turn off my cell phone music that was playing in the background. Elaborate a bit on that one.
That's YouTube. That's thanks for that, Francois. I almost forgot about that. Copyright. You cannot put anything on YouTube that remotely resembles copyright. A couple of things will happen. They will just remove the video. The guy whose music you're putting on there can claim royalties of you, or just say, sorry, just delete the thing. If your channel is monetized and you're earning money from this particular video, it can partly or completely be demonetized. You can also, if you're a repeat offender, YouTube will just actually scrap you. Google will take you off and say, sorry, you're a repeat offender, you've got no respect for people's copyrights, and they will actually just take you off the air. Simple as that. So be very careful for copyright and copyright infringement when you do these sort of things. And maybe that's a good spot for me, Francois, to thank Morne Himan for the music that you will probably hear at this point. Morne actually created this track for us and gave us the rights to be able to use the track.
So one of our last comments is, why don't you just buy a pre-built car? It's like driving to Nissan and buying a Z. It's an absolutely amazing vehicle, you'll have lots of fun, etc, etc. The answer is short. It's about the fun, the process of it. So for me, it was planning what you want to do, deciding on colors, deciding on look and feel, on customization. Yes, you can do that on your Z or your GTR and so on, and the people love it, and I mean, we do love it. But this is something you start day one, you enjoy it from day one. It's not about the money. Yes, sometimes it's saying, okay, I managed to build a car in 80,000 Rand, and that's your aim, so do it. I didn't go for that. I said, well, I have a few years, I have a garage, I don't have children to look after, so I need some hobby, and this became my hobby for a few years until the hobby changed to building a house. You heard the history of that. But it's about enjoying every moment of it, figuring out how things work, looking at the wires. Today, it's one of those things that if you hear a noise, you know exactly what is causing that noise, because you've installed each wire yourself. You checked each and every bolt yourself, and now you know this is how it works. So it's all about the experience of building a car and the passion of putting it together. And that's the most important. So yes, if you are inclined to just enjoying a car, by all means, buy the car, follow the tips we mentioned previously about history, etc. But enjoy the car. Otherwise, enjoy the process. Decide what piece of metal you want to use, where you want to use it, and just have fun with it.
I think this is going to be a wrap for today's video, and we will, please do comment, please do share, and please do subscribe if you're not a subscriber yet. We noticed that more than 60% of the people that watch our videos are not subscribers, so do subscribe.
And very much important, remember,
yes,
life is too short
to drive boring cars, and these
are not boring.
are not boring cars.